My name is Nathan. I'm 27, living in a sleepy town just outside Portland. I'm a structural architect for a mid-sized firm downtown. It's not glamorous, but most days I don't mind it. Life's steady. A 9-to-5 grind, a couple of close buddies, and weekends filled with hiking barbecues or just sinking into the couch. No wife, no kids, and if I'm honest, things have started to feel a little too predictable lately. Safe, maybe too damn safe. One Saturday afternoon, after a long, dull week at the office, I remembered my old pal Ryan promised to lend me some tools. I was fixing up a second-hand bookshelf, needed a solid drill. We grew up tight best friends since high school, his family like my own. I figured I'd swing by, grab the drill, maybe catch up. Didn't bother texting or calling. Ryan's place was my second home growing up. I'd walked in and out so many times it never crossed my mind to announce myself. His parents, especially his mom, Evelyn, were always warm open. I remember her as kind, quick, with a laugh, always baking cookies, always a smile for anyone who stepped through her door. Driving to their place, nostalgia hit hard. Same faded blue shutters, same cracked driveway. The late afternoon sun cast a soft glow over everything. I jogged up the porch steps, knocked casually, expecting Ryan. But it wasn't him. The door creaked open, and there stood Evelyn, wearing nothing but a pale lavender sleep shirt, loose, soft, clinging just enough to hint at her form. Her hair was tousled like she'd just rolled out of bed or was lounging through a lazy Saturday. No makeup, but her face radiant, natural, a quiet beauty that stopped me cold. For a split second, I didn't recognize her. It was like a fist to the gut. I stood there, frozen mouth half open like some dumb kid. She gave a soft laugh, hand covering her mouth. "Nathan, you scared the hell out of me," she said, her voice warm, familiar, but laced with something that made my pulse jump. Come in. Ryan's not here, but you can wait if you want." I nodded, fumbling for words, and stepped inside. The house smelled the same: vanilla candles, fresh laundry, a scent that wrapped around me like a memory I couldn't shake. I kicked off my shoes by the door, followed her to the kitchen. She moved with ease, completely at home, pouring herself a coffee. Ryan's out with his dad running errands. They'll be back soon. Coffee. Sure, thanks, I managed, trying not to stare but failing. The way her sleep shirt hung loose, the faint curve of her collarbone catching the light, the way her hair fell over her shoulders. She wasn't trying to be anything but herself, and maybe that's what made it so dangerous. I sat at the kitchen counter, feeling like a nervous teenager again. Evelyn, no Lila. Her name hit me like a shot of whiskey. She handed me a mug, sat across from me. "So, how's life treating you?" she asked, her smile soft, her eyes searching mine like she could see right through me. I shrugged, sipped the coffee to buy time. "Pretty good, I guess. Work keeps me busy. Been fixing up old furniture lately, trying not to stare at screens all day." She laughed, a sound so sweet it cut. "Good for you. Most guys your age are glued to their phones." We talked about my job, Ryan, the neighborhood. Nothing deep, but I couldn't stop noticing the little things. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the way she leaned in just a fraction like she was hanging on my every word. It didn't feel like talking to someone's mom. It felt like talking to a woman, real, alive, electric. Rain started falling after about 20 minutes, a soft patter against the windows. She stood to close them, and as she did, her sleep shirt slipped off one shoulder. She pulled it back up, gave an embarrassed laugh. "Guess I wasn't expecting company today," she said, glancing over her shoulder with a smile that hit me like a spark. I smiled back, but inside something shifted. something I knew I shouldn't think about. When she sat back down, the conversation eased up, but the air felt heavier, charged with things unsaid. I could feel it, a pull between us, subtle but undeniable. That's when I realized I wasn't just sitting with Evelyn anymore. I was with Lila. And for some reason I couldn't see her the same way anymore. Maybe it was the rain drumming on the windows, the warm coffee and vanilla haze of the room, or just the fact that life had felt so damn ordinary lately. But something about that afternoon felt different. Sitting across from Lila, I wasn't thinking about Ryan or why I'd come. I was just there, watching her move, her smile, the way her eyes held mine like they were pulling me into a secret. She leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table, chin resting in her hands. "You know," she said, "it feels like just yesterday you and Ryan were running through this house, tracking mud everywhere." I chuckled. "Yeah, sorry about that." Her smile warmed. "No, I miss it. The house feels too quiet these days." There was a weight behind her words, a loneliness I hadn't noticed before. It made her real, not just someone's mom, not just a woman in a sleep shirt, but a person with her own story, her own ache. I sipped my coffee, unsure what to say. I wasn't used to seeing adults, especially ones I'd looked up to as a kid, as vulnerable. It was like peeking behind a curtain I wasn't supposed to touch. "You still at that architecture firm?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Yeah," I said, setting my mug down. "Coming up on 3 years now. Good. Pays the bills right." She laughed again, that soft, melodic sound. "That's adulthood, isn't it? Not quite what we pictured as kids." I smiled. "Yeah, feels like life just happens. Like I'm going through the motions." She looked at me, then really looked at me. Something in her eyes twisted my stomach, a mix of understanding, recognition, maybe even sadness. "I know that feeling," she said softly. Her fingers traced circles on her mug, her gaze drifting to the window. "Sometimes I wonder how it all turned out this way. You have all these dreams when you're young, then one day you wake up and realize you've settled for something less." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to comfort her, say something wise or reassuring. But another part, the part that couldn't stop noticing the way her voice softened, the way her fingers toyed with her sleeve, just sat there, struck by her beauty in that moment. It wasn't the sleep shirt, or the way her hair curled at the ends, or the rain wrapping the world in a soft haze. It was her Lila, the woman who'd suddenly become more than a memory of cookies and homework help. The air between us grew thick, heavy. We didn't speak for a long moment. "You turned out to be a good man, Nathan," she said, her voice low, almost hesitant. The compliment hit deeper than it should have. "Thanks," I said, my voice rough, hating how nervous I sounded. She smiled, something softer this time, almost wistful. "Ryan's lucky to have a friend like you." I gave an awkward laugh. "Well, we've been through a lot. He's family." She nodded slowly, her eyes on her coffee again, like she was wrestling with something inside. I felt the same tension building in my chest, an ache I didn't fully understand. Outside, the rain fell harder, pounding the windows. "Maybe I should head out," I said, standing, though every part of me wanted to stay. Lila stood too, arms loosely crossed. "You don't have to go," she said, her voice steady but her eyes saying something else entirely. I hesitated, keys heavy in my pocket. It would have been easy to say no, to walk away, to pretend nothing happened. But instead I sat back down. She did too, closer this time, not touching, but close enough for me to feel her warmth. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she said with a soft, almost embarrassed laugh. "Guess it's just nice to have someone to talk to." Her vulnerability hit me harder than anything else could. She wasn't trying to seduce. She wasn't playing games. She was just lonely, and somehow so was I. The conversation lightened. She asked about my parents, my plans. I asked about her hobbies, what she did when she wasn't taking care of everyone else. Turns out, Lila painted. Had a whole collection upstairs, landscapes, portraits, abstracts she'd never shown anyone. Maybe one day I'll show you, she said, her smile teasing but shy. I'd like that, I said, honest. Another pause, another heavy silence. Her eyes lingered on mine a little longer this time, and I knew deep down she felt it too. This wasn't one-sided. Whatever this was, it was real. A crack of thunder shook the sky, and she flinched slightly. Reflexively, I reached out, touched her hand. Just a light touch, barely intentional, but it was enough. Enough to jolt me. Enough for her to glance at our hands, then back at me with a look I couldn't read. We pulled away at the same time, laughing nervously, but the damage was done. A line had been crossed, not physically, but emotionally. I should get you a towel for the rain, she said, standing quickly, avoiding my eyes. I nodded, heart pounding. When she disappeared down the hall, I stared at the empty doorway, wondering what the hell was happening to me, and knowing deep down there was no going back. I stayed at the counter, gripping my mug, trying to steady myself. Told myself to calm down, breathe, not read too much into it. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe it was just a lonely afternoon, the kind where people say things they don't mean. But I knew better. Something had shifted. Something real. Lila returned, holding a towel and a dry hoodie. Here, she said, tossing them over the back of a chair in case you get wet heading out. Thanks, I said, voice rough. She sat again, closer now, not touching, but close enough for me to catch the faint floral scent of her shampoo. We sat in silence, the rain steady outside. You know, she said softly, staring at her coffee, I used to think I had it all figured out. I didn't say anything, just watched her, letting her talk. I got married young, had Ryan young, thought life would just fall into place. You work hard, build a family, stay loyal, grow old together. She gave a sad smile. No one tells you about the lonely parts, the parts where you lie next to someone who doesn't really see you anymore. Her words hung between us. I felt something stir, deep and raw. Not pity, not even desire, just a need to be close to her, to let her know she wasn't invisible. She looked up at me then, and for the first time there was no polite distance in her eyes. No mask, just raw, quiet sadness. Sorry, she said quickly, shaking her head. You didn't come here to hear me spill my guts. No, I said firmly. It's fine. I don't mind. Another long pause. We sipped our coffee like it could anchor us. You're a good man, Nathan, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I hope you never lose that. I swallowed, my heart slamming against my ribs. Every rational part of me screamed to get up, thank her for the coffee, and leave. Instead, I stayed. The rain fell harder, blurring the world outside, like we were cut off from everything else, like time had slowed just for us. You must think I'm crazy, she said, with a soft, self-deprecating laugh. Not even a little, I said instantly. We locked eyes across the table. The air grew thick, heavy with things neither of us could say. She stood slowly, set her mug down with a soft clink. She crossed the small space between us, stopping just a step away. For a moment, we just stood there, the rain and the faint hum of the fridge the only sounds. Then she reached out, hesitant, and touched my face. Just her fingertips, light as a feather, like she was afraid I'd vanish if she pressed too hard. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Her hand lingered, and I saw it, fear, doubt, a pull to step back. But she didn't, and neither did I. I stood, my movements slow, careful. We were close now, close enough to feel the heat of her body, the slight tremble of her fingers. "I don't know if we should," she whispered, her voice unconvincing. It wasn't a no. "I know," I said. And then, without thinking, without questioning, I leaned down and kissed her. Soft at first, tentative, like we were both afraid the fragile thing between us would shatter. She kissed me back. No rush, no desperate fumbling. Just a slow, aching connection, like two people who hadn't been touched right in too long. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer. My arms wrapped around her waist, and in that moment, the world outside the rain-streaked windows vanished. We pulled apart, breathless eyes, wide, stunned. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Everything was laid bare now. Everything had changed. But even as every nerve in my body screamed to pull her closer, to lose myself in her, I knew we couldn't cross the next line. Not fully. Not here. Not like this. Lila pressed her forehead to my chest, and I held her tight, asking for nothing more. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't even about desire. It was about being seen, understood, no longer invisible. We stood like that for a long time, just breathing together. When she finally pulled away, tears glistened in her eyes, not sadness, but something deeper. Gratitude, loss, relief. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "You don't have to be," I replied, meaning every word. She gave a shaky smile, brushed her fingers across my cheek one last time, then stepped back. "We can't," she started, her voice catching. "I know," I said. "It's okay." And it was. Even if it hurt, even if it left a hollow in me, it was okay. Because what we'd had in that moment, brief and impossible as it was true. She handed me the towel and hoodie, her fingers lingering on mine a second longer than necessary. "I should go," I said quietly. She nodded. "Be careful out there." I nodded back, not trusting myself to say more. I took the towel, pulled the hoodie over my head, and headed for the door. When I glanced back one last time, she stood in the kitchen doorway, arms loosely crossed, eyes full of 100 unsaid things, offering a faint smile. I stepped into the rain. The door clicked shut behind me. The cold rain stung my skin, but I barely felt it. All I could think of was her Lila, and the line we'd crossed quietly. Gently, a line we both knew we could never cross again. I sat in my car, gripping the wheel, staring at the house through the blurred windshield. My heart pounded, my head spun. What had happened wasn't planned. It wasn't something you expect, especially with someone you've known most of your life. I wiped my face, tried to shake it off. This couldn't happen again. I knew it. She knew it. But knowing didn't dull the ache. I drove home slowly, the rain making the roads slick and glossy under the streetlights. At my apartment, I tossed the wet hoodie on the floor, collapsed on the couch, stared at the ceiling. That kiss played over and over in my mind, how natural it felt, how right. I was scared. I wanted to go back, knock on her door again just to be near her. But I didn't. I couldn't. The next few days passed in a strange fog. I went to work, hit the gym, answered friends' texts, even Ryan's, who had no clue. Life went on as usual, even when it felt like I was stuck between two worlds. A week later, my phone buzzed. "Lila, if you have time, I'd love to show you those paintings I mentioned." My gut twisted reading it. On the surface, it was innocent, but we both knew it wasn't about the paintings. Still, I texted back, "I'd love that." She invited me over that evening. Ryan was out late with friends. Her husband was working the night shift that week. She didn't spell it out. She didn't have to. We both understood. When I pulled up to the house, it was dark except for the porch light. My hands were sweaty on the wheel. For a second, I almost turned back. Almost, but I didn't. She opened the door wearing jeans and a soft sweater, hair loosely tied back. No sleep shirt, no casual intimacy. She was building walls between us, trying to keep it safe, controlled. I both loved and hated it. "Hey," she said, her smile soft. "Hey." I stepped inside, and it felt different. Heavier, like the house itself remembered what had happened. She led me upstairs to a room I'd never seen. It smelled of oil paint and fresh canvas. Paintings leaned against the walls, landscapes, bright abstracts, soft pastel portraits. Some were good, some were incredible. "You did all this?" I asked, genuinely impressed. She gave an embarrassed laugh. "Yeah, just a hobby." I walked around slowly, taking it in. "You're really talented." "Thanks," she said, blushing slightly. For a few minutes, things felt almost normal. We talked about her favorite artist places she loved to paint. She showed me an unfinished lake sunset. But the longer we stood there, the heavier the air grew. She was close, just a little too close. I could feel the tension building, subtle but undeniable. Neither of us moved for a long time. "I'm glad you came," she said finally, her voice soft. "Me too." Another long silence. Then, almost without thinking, she took my hand, a light touch. No words. I turned to her, our eyes locked. This time we didn't kiss. We didn't need to. We just stood there, holding hands in a room full of paintings, pretending for a few minutes that the world outside didn't exist, that we weren't who we were. Pretending we could keep this up. Finally, she let go, stepped back, quickly wiped her eyes like she didn't want me to see. "I'm sorry," she said again. I shook my head. "Don't be." We sat on the floor, backs against the wall, talking quietly about everything. Her childhood, her dream of being a travel photographer. My job, how it wasn't what I'd imagined. We laughed about old memories, Ryan drunk and falling into bushes at a high school party, me breaking my arm trying to skateboard down their driveway. It felt good, easy, and so damn dangerous, because the more time we spent together, the harder it was to lie to ourselves. At some point, Lila glanced at her watch. "You should probably go soon. Ryan might be back early." I nodded, my throat tight. Neither of us wanted to move. I stood slowly, pulled her up with me. We faced each other, the house's soft noises around us, the smell of paint and rain lingering. She touched my cheek again, that feather-light touch. "I'll never forget you," she whispered. "You don't have to," I said. She gave a sad smile, and for a moment it looked like she might kiss me again, but she didn't, and neither did I. Deep down, we both knew it would only make things harder. I squeezed her hand one last time, then turned for the door. Walking away felt like ripping out a piece of myself. At the front door, I looked back. Lila stood in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself, watching me with that sad smile. "Good night, Nathan," she said softly. "Good night, Lila." I stepped into the cool night air, the door closing behind me, the darkness swallowing me whole. I didn't look back. After that night, I didn't contact Lila, and she didn't contact me. No long goodbyes, no explanations, no dragging it out. We both understood without saying it. Whatever had happened belonged in a small secret corner, untouched, unspoken. Life went on. I threw myself into work, took on extra projects, stayed late at the office. I hit the gym more, filled my evenings with anything to keep my mind busy, anything to stop thinking about her. Ryan and I stayed friends. Things between us were normal, easy, even if he never knew. And I'd never let him suspect. That was the silent promise Lila and I made to protect what we had by never letting it touch the lives around us. Now when I visit their place, I text first. No more unannounced drop-ins. And when I'm there, Lila is polite, warm, but distant, exactly as a friend's mom should be. The easy laughs, the lingering looks, the soft touches, they're gone. We both pretend it never happened, and in a way, it didn't. It exists only between us, a secret locked in a part of ourselves no one else can touch. The hardest part isn't avoiding her. It's the moments I catch her looking at me even for a second, and I know she remembers too. A few weeks later, I stopped by to return some borrowed tools. Ryan wasn't home, and Lila answered the door dressed in jeans and a sweater. Nothing to remind me of that rainy afternoon when everything shifted. "Hey, Nathan," she said softly, stepping aside. "Hey, Mrs. Dawson," I said, slipping back into old habits like armor. I handed her the toolbox, made small talk about the weather work, how fast the year was going. Nothing important, nothing dangerous. But as I turned to leave, she called my name softly. I stopped at the door, heart pounding. When I looked back, she stood there, arms crossed, her eyes catching the late afternoon light. There was a tenderness in her face, not sadness, but acceptance. "Take care of yourself," she said. "I will," I said, my voice catching. And that was it. No confessions, no promises, no long goodbyes. Just two people grateful for something brief and impossible, letting it go because they had to. I left that house for the last time that summer, feeling both lighter and heavier at once. Months passed. I met someone new, a girl from work, sweet, funny, optimistic, in a way that made me want to be better. We started dating slow and careful. For the first time in a while, I let myself imagine a real future. Not something stolen, not something hidden, but something I could hold in the open. Sometimes driving past Ryan Street, or when the rain hits my window just right, I think of Lila that rainy afternoon, the way she opened the door in her sleep shirt, and everything I thought I knew tilted sideways. But I don't dwell on it. I don't hurt over it, because some moments don't need to grow into something bigger. Some moments are meant to happen to change you, then be held close like a secret you never speak. Lila and I shared something real, something beautiful, and we did the bravest thing we could. We let it go. The last time I saw her was months later at a neighborhood barbecue. Ryan waved me over, beer in hand, laughing about some old joke. Lila was there, helping set out plates, laughing with the crowd. When our eyes met across the yard, we both smiled, a small, knowing smile. No regret, no pain, just gratitude. A slight nod, a silent thank you, a wordless goodbye. I turned back to Ryan, clinked my beer with his, joked about who could still beat who at basketball. Lila went back to her friends, her laugh blending into the warm summer air. And that was it. No second chances, no secret meetings, no unfinished business. Just two people who stumbled into something unexpected, something fleeting, something they'd quietly cherish forever but never return to. Life went on, and so did we.